Well, welcome everyone. We're going to be talking about the path from rewards to investment crowdfunding. And I have with me today Sidney Baptista of Pioneers. I'm Kathleen Minogue, the founder and CEO of Crowdfund Better. Our focus is on education across the entire crowdfunding industry, from donation to rewards to investment. And so I just wanted to start out by reviewing the types of crowdfunding. Let me just pull this up, because really it's a journey from one to the next for me and a lot of my clients. And one of the words I heard today from all the portal operators was community, community, community. And I can't wait for Sid to tell you his story of community to crowdfunding. So let's just roll through these quickly, right? There's donation crowdfunding for personal needs, causes, nonprofits, and also for business emergencies, as we saw during COVID. There are microloans. I had two things come up there. So if a business is looking to get a 15K or less 0% loan, they can use a platform called Kiva. And this is not subject to securities rules because it's 0%. And I'm sure Tapilson could tell us all a lot more about when it's not. There's rewards crowdfunding. This is really great for product pre-sales, local businesses, social enterprises, and there's all sorts of marketing and customer feedback information that you can glean from rewards, and we'll talk a little bit about that. And then, of course, what we're all here talking about mostly today, investment, equity or debt, capital. But I also want to think even further about how we can look at stacking crowdfunding, right? You hear things about seed, pre-seed, seed, Series A, Series B, and I just wanted to share my perspective that you can build crowdfunding into the capital stack all along the way. And so, which leads us to what I have to do for Sidney here, because he is testing the waters. So we're going to read the disclosure. Pioneers Apparel Inc. is testing the waters to gauge investor interest in an offering under regulation crowdfunding. No money or other consideration is being solicited. If sent, it will not be accepted. No offer to buy securities will be accepted. No part of the purchase price will be received until a Form C is filed, and only through an intermediary's platform. Any indication of interest involves no obligation or commitment of any kind. All right, so we've got that out of the way. And I'm just going to sneak peek a little here, because Sid's going to talk to you about this, but we put a little timeline together. And, the origins of Pioneers goes back to 2017, and this timeline takes you up to 2022. And there's a lot in here, but you'll notice way over on the left-hand side, right toward the beginning, is Sid's rewards campaign. So I'm going to stop my share, and then let's get the stop share. And introduce Sidney Baptista, who is the founder and CEO of Pioneers Performance Streetwear. And I'm not even going to try to do justice to talking about who Pioneers is and what you're about. But as a way to, starting to tell the story, because it'll tell everyone who you are, can you trace how Pioneers got started? And then take us through why you chose crowdfunding, in this case, rewards. Like, when did it come into the picture, and how did that become part of your story?
Sure. Thank you for the intro, Kathleen. I'm happy to be here. I always smile when I look at that timeline that we've put together, that Scott put together, because when you're in it every day, you don't see the progress. But when you take a look back and wow, 2 years ago, I was just kicking off a rewards crowdfund with no product, and now I'm sitting in an office with product, and we launched our second season in Chicago and just had another Boston Marathon. Yeah, so it's pretty cool moment. But yeah, so Pioneers Performance Streetwear is a company that I founded. It's a streetwear inspired running apparel company. It's the only Black-owned running apparel company in the country. But before that, I started a running community called Pioneers Run Crew, and the gist of that is I wanted to diversify running in Boston. I wanted to bring running to my neighborhood. I was tired of being one of a few people of color in running spaces, and I would have to leave my neighborhood and go downtown or by the water where there aren't many people of color to go running with groups. And so after I became a running coach and worked for Nike for a bit, I was like, I think I can. I just want to be able to step out of my house and go for a run and build a community around that. And so that started in 2017. And right out the gate, we started working with brands who were interested in what we were doing, and what we realized were that brands really and companies really want to use, like, whatever you're creating, right? The community and culture you've created, they want to come and use that for them to sell their product back to you and back to your community. And what I saw was that we never got paid for any of that stuff, so we were getting free product. And once that free product was like, yeah, we got enough free product, but we can't keep doing this work for free and giving it to you. And so in 2020, when we were all stuck at home, I decided to launch an apparel company. And so it was a good time in the sense that I had left my previous job, and I was sitting at home, and I actually had gotten let go from a previous job right before the pandemic kicked off. So I had a really big I had some money that they gave me, severance. And so I was able to put that in 2020 right off the gate, and able to start kind of just exploring this idea of starting a running apparel company. And that got me through prototyping. And then I was trying to raise, I don't know if you guys remember, what was it called? The app that you went on and talked during the pandemic. What was that called again? Do you remember? It was an app. I think it was Clubhouse. It was called Clubhouse. Yes, yeah. Anyone remember Clubhouse? I remember going in the Clubhouse and just like talking to people about raising money, and I just spent a lot of time thinking about raising money. And someone was like, "You should try crowdfunding," and I was like, "Huh, this is interesting. Like, I should look into it." And so I found Fund Black Founders, and I found Kathleen, and it ended up being the perfect solution for me at the time because I had built this running community from scratch for 3 years. And we were supporting them through the pandemic as well. And now I had this product I was going to sell, and what better way than to use my community to rally behind us and kick off, rewards crowdfunding. And so that's kind of how I came into it.
Yeah. And, raised over $50,000, launched season 1, right? Like, you didn't have an e-commerce site before you did that campaign. But to give the group a sense, like, how much money did you spend on paid media on that first campaign?
I don't think we did any paid media.
Exactly. We did no paid media. It was your community that you had spent 3 years building that showed up, and they showed up really strong.
Yes, yes, exactly. And so, yeah, that's how we launched. So when we did that, we had a bunch of prototypes that we shot content for, put it up. Didn't have a website. Had a landing page, took a lot of pictures, and went through the campaign with that when it was all pre-orders. And that's how I funded a full first season of my product.
And then you had some products to sell. And then, looking at our timeline, some people might have thought that your business was for real or something, because you got some investment after that, private.
Yeah, exactly. So once the equity crowdfund launched and product in market, started making some noise in the sense that, like, people saw what I was doing and saw there was a need. And so I did, through my network and through showing that this company was real, right? Like, I think if I come to my investors and I didn't have product, or I didn't show that I had a community of people that were supporting it, or I didn't had raised money before, I think even more importantly, it was like to have the money from the crowdfund to kind of show that I was doing something, I think really helped. Well, I know really helped me get my first check, which was cool. Yeah.
And, then you won a couple of awards, got features in PR, Runner's World, other things. You did some pop-ups at some marathons. Yeah.
Yeah.
And, like, we always talk about the non-financial values of crowdfunding. So, like, what was the non-financial value? You know, like, yeah, you got the 50 plus K and you got the investment, but like, was there anything else that that first campaign gave you that you didn't expect, or, you were happily it did?
I think it was like people be able to follow the journey from an idea to product and market, and people really supporting kind of that, like, you created this and use your community and your people that you've always talked about to get you to where you are, and you're actually, I was staying true to what we talked through on the since we built the community of, like, so the product is actually made to fit people who run in our community. And so, like, what we found also was that, like, the running apparel, we were working with the brands, like we worked with Lululemon, right? For example, Lululemon was a partner of ours in 2021, right before I actually had product in market. And all of their product is made for, like, majority of the product is made for, like, thin, tall people. And so the running community that I created doesn't, that's not, no, the majority of people that come to my running community, the majority of people who run, period, are not tall and slim. And so we found issues with the product. And so our product is made to support what we call a real body. And so I think being able to show all that through rewards crowdfund, and be able to then give people product and have them test it and have them wear it and have them love it. I think tracing that back all the way to, like, the storytelling part through rewards crowdfunding was very helpful. And people were like, "Oh, this is, like, serious." Sometimes you feel like people doubt you, or but being able to like raise a campaign and sell $50,000, I think made it legitimate. It legitimized it for some people. And not that I needed it, but I feel like every time you make a move, it legitimizes a little bit more for the next set of people. And so I think the crowdfunding campaign was a huge part of that.
And so you win some prizes, and then there's this, that I don't know what happened with REI, Sid. You know,
Yeah. So we did we're growing. We are, growing slowly at this time. This is 2022, early 2022. We're growing online, and I get I think, a direct message on Instagram from one of the head investors at REI's new venture arm, which is called Path Ahead Ventures. And they were saying, that they're looking for companies to invest in, because they're expanding kind of what they're looking at and how they define the outdoors. And running has become a category that is booming for them, and they want to find companies that they can support through funding, and then also carry product in the stores at some point. And that's how I started to come and figure out that there was no other Black-owned running apparel company in the country. And so when they were looking to diversify their product mix, like, I was the only one they could find. And so, and then that was how we started. And then I went through, like, an application process, and got them the product, legitimizing all of that. And then I got into a program where they picked 6 companies in the outdoors, running being kind of like part of the new outdoors, to help us go through a accelerator program that then culminated with investment at the end of it. And so that was another kind of stepping stone. And I know that if I didn't do the crowdfunding, because what I went through when I went through the application process, and at the end asked them why I got selected out of, hundreds of applicants, it was like that community aspect. They kept going back to the community. The community supported you when there was just an idea, and you showed it through the crowdfund, right? And now, yeah. So I think there are a lot of apparel companies, and so I think what made ours special was that we had community support behind it.
and then RGA Ventures comes in, right?
Yeah.
And all the time you and I are talking, right? So, like, this is the thing, right? When you work with us, we keep in touch, we follow your story, and we say, so, nudge, nudge, you're thinking about investment crowdfunding, Sid? You're thinking about it, right? Now, I mean, this was what, 2022 we were talking. And I remember we were having conversations, and, like, your VCs, like, nobody was jazzed about it at all. And now here comes 2023. And now what's the conversation, Sid?
I know, right? I think I remember going into one of my last sessions with REI, with the with the program we went through, which is called Navigate, the Navigate program, and they were like the investment portion of the session, or it was an investment session, and they were like, yeah, don't look at equity crowdfunding, don't look at crowdfunding. If you want to raise money through venture, they're not, no one wants that, no one wants that. And so, I was like, okay, that was kind of the messaging. And then in early 23, it was like, if you don't equity crowdfund, you can't raise money from investors. They want to see, they want to see it. And I went back to my investor and I was like, I called them out on it. It's like, you said this in November. Now you're saying this in January. He's like, oh, the landscape changed. But they want to see, investors want to see that you have, you know, someone behind you, like you have people behind you, or, whatever that messaging was. And so, um, yeah. So I thought it was interesting how that, Kathleen, I'm pretty sure I told you about all this.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I mean, it's interesting because as an industry, we hear the same kinds of things. And so it's interesting to have an entrepreneur actually come to you and deliver like, yeah, last year was no good. This year is just great.
Um,
But we had been talking about it always. It had always been sort of on the table, as soon as you finish the rewards campaign because of that community aspect. But also, if you could talk about the why, like there's reasons to do investment crowdfunding that are financial,
mhm.
but there's a huge why underneath why, doing regulation crowdfunding for you is, just it's a big,
Yeah.
um, so
Yeah. So I think it goes with A, my values, and B, the messaging and the brand, kind of what we do. And it all is all under like it all stems from ownership. And if you can't own and you can't, if you don't have ownership, then you don't really make decisions, or you don't really have, um, yeah, you don't really make decisions. That's what it comes down to. So for me, if I'm looking at the rent industry and I'm saying, hey, I didn't see many people in my, running in Boston. If you look at the Boston Marathon, like X amount of people who are black. We're talking about black Americans or people of color in this country that aren't from, let's say Africa, where everyone who wins the marathon comes from Africa, right? But if we want to start making like waves in the renting industry where we're creating experiences for communities of color, we have to have some sort of ownership in here, because the brands are going to come, they're going to sign a couple people, they're going to give free product, and if you don't take the free product, someone else is going to take a free product. And once the budgets dry up and diversity is no longer a buzzword, they're gone to the next one, right? And so I thought it was very so I look at ownership, and part of the reason why I started the company is like we need to own something. And then now that I have an opportunity to give that ownership to my community and have them buy into this message and have them think about it, I'm looking to shift the culture around, like influencer versus ownership. And you can be an influencer, but once the brands pull the dollars, then you're not, you have no say in what's going on. And so I'm really key on ownership. And so equity crowdfund gives a piece of what we're doing to the community. And so like kind of just drives down home my messaging and my values around ownership. And so that's a big why that I'm doing in equity crowdfund campaign.
Well, the first campaign theme was run the culture, which is still, all about pioneers. And where are we moving now to? It's own the culture. Um, so, community, like I said, the portal owners were all talking about building community. So how have you nurtured community? Because in order to take them with you to this investment campaign, right? That you had the community, they did the rewards. What have you done between the close of that rewards campaign and this investment campaign to keep the community in the story with you and invested in emotionally in what's going on?
I wish I could say that I had like this huge grand plan of how to do this, and I wish I did. But I don't know, I just kept it, I kept it going. Even when, entrepreneurship is hard, running an apparel company is hard. But I think people love to see kind of like the behind the scenes of what you're doing to and how you're growing. And I always kept my community there with me, whether it was like doing small pop-ups in Boston or taking them virtually on a tour that I went on a tour of 5 cities and just shooting content, sending emails about that stuff, um, meeting new people in these cities. So I did it through content and emailing and keeping them just kind of abreast of all of the successes, the ups and the downs that we were facing, but never getting too down because no one wants that either. But definitely being vulnerable and sharing kind of like what it takes and what it's taken. And I think um, my community continues to, and it also supported my community with like with product and making sure I'm just at this stage of my company that I'm overly nice about like anything that's going on in the company. So it's like product fits, if there's a fit problem, making sure that, you know, that the brand is supporting that runner through this journey. So if something needs to be exchanged, it's like making sure that my policies around my product um, aren't deterring people from coming back. So like free returns or exchanges and um, yeah, and just the messaging, keeping the messaging the same and not looking like I'm like running away to chase the dollars, which is I would never do that because that's I couldn't create a brand like this if I was like that. But yeah, just keeping them in the loop and not going away and then coming back when you need money later. That's
Yeah. And what I'd say, looking in from the outside,
yes,
Sid,
yeah, I would love to hear this.
is, all the, it's not just a sales ploy, right?
Mm.
So, I'm just going to give you a little time here to talk about what just happened in Boston, because like this is how deep community goes for pioneers. And it's a big deal as we're looking into like, okay, now I want to put my money where,
Yeah.
before I was making purchases and now I'm going to invest. So do you want to talk about like how deep that culture and community go?
Yeah, I think so the Boston Marathon, the most, one of the most celebrated marathons in all of the world, doesn't actually run through Boston. It runs through a ton of wealthy neighborhoods and communities, not neighborhoods, towns, from like central Massachusetts into Boston. And so those in those neighborhoods, they're, anywhere from 75 to like 90% white. Um, and so for us, my running community, for us to cheer for the marathon, we have to leave the city of Boston and go to a neighborhood or a community that's, that's predominantly white to cheer. And so we were in Newton, and we bring the energy, we bring our culture to running. And we were over policed in Newton because we're not sure exactly why. We're still going through it. It's still very open, and there's an investigation around it. But essentially, the police came and surrounded us on both sides. Um, and just like were keeping us from cheering. Not I don't know. I still trying to figure out exactly why, but they basically lined police officers in front of us and behind us, and just blocked us in because we were cheering or because we had a big group of people of color or we're not sure exactly why. Like the Massachusetts Attorney General was getting involved, and so we're figuring out like why the police did that. But part of it that didn't happen anywhere else on the course. There were people, we had friends, predominantly white running communities that do exactly what we do: music, food, um, confetti cannons, supporting people, just the culture of running, right? We weren't even like handing out alcohol like most of these groups do, or like running on the course and kissing people, or like putting big structures on the course, which is what's celebrated all around the marathon. And so like it for me, it's like this general like we need to push if we're gonna embrace our culture in running, we need to show up how we want to show up, and we need to show up with our culture, and we don't want to have to be told by brands or by anyone how we should be celebrating our runners. Um, and so from that, we've had a lot of supporters coming out and saying like we've had people who've won the marathon in the past, Americans and like pro runners saying like our cheer zone was the best that they saw coming through and excited and it helped them get up Heartbreak Hill. And so out of this, we're starting to see a lot of support for kind of, I guess, the brand or for the community, for everything we're doing. Um, and the way I look at it is the sport of running, the face of running is broadening. And some people are just not used to it or aren't used to seeing it. And I don't know, some people feel threatened, I guess. I don't know.
So I guess what I'm saying is the messaging coming into this campaign is so clear about owning the culture. And, we, like you said, I can't just be an influencer for Nike. I gotta own this space, or we don't have any control over this space. Um, so, you come into this process of investment with a lot of experience on the marketing side, because you already done this whole thing, right? So, like, I'm sure, if there's anyone in the group here, or anyone who'll be listening later, like, okay, so now you have this whole other thing, right? Because that's what I say, once you've done rewards crowdfunding, you understand the cadence and the work around marketing, but then you get this financial and legal compliance. How's that been going for you, Sid? How you been feeling?
Yeah, I mean, it's a whole new world. I'm like, I started talking to the compliance people or the financial compliance people, and they're asking me so many questions. I'm like, all right, got to understand all this. So I'm figuring it out.
But it's can you imagine what it would be to try to do it all at the same time? Learning, like, not having the crowdfunding experience and throwing this in.
Oh yeah, sorry. Yeah. No, I mean I couldn't because I wasn't as much prepared as you think you are. I wasn't, I learned a lot through rewards crowdfunding, and I know now I won't start without having all of that stuff in place. So going through that process, which I thought was pretty intense, because it's all about I'm sure we could talk about it, but it's all about priming your people, getting them excited, and then get them going early on. It was a lot of work, and it was tiring. But now we got to look at all this other stuff we got to do on top of that, because we got to do the same thing, and probably a little harder at this time. It's not just buy product. This is like, give me your money, and maybe at some point you might make some money.
Uh, so, so what, I'm going to open it up for questions in just 1 minute. What advice would you have for someone, as now that you're like in the depths here, right? When's the right time for rewards, and when's the right time for investment, crowdfunding, right? You've done this, right? If
Yeah.
someone's like, I don't know which one, I don't know, I don't know if it's time.
Yeah, I would always start with rewards because it's just a lower entry barrier of entry, and it's a good testing ground. But I would say starting with the rewards definitely, and I would say like think about who's supporting you, like build that initial list of who you think will support that. And because like if you look at like Kickstarter, and everyone like looks at Kickstarter, and you think it takes a lot of money for people to do that on Kickstarter. They hire people to do it. Um, so for me, especially coming in with no money, it's really thinking through who you think those people will be, and making sure you start talking to people about what you're doing, and building a community, honestly. Um, yeah, that's my advice, is like start with rewards for sure. Unless you have some like crazy tech that that's changing the world, and you can go to equity. But I would say, start with rewards.
And what just to help what Sid is leaving out is that he's already done this process of preparing all of his email and all of his social. There's this entire preparation process that we do at Crowdfund Better. So like Sid comes into this process going, okay, yeah, I know I have to do all of that before I even think
Yeah.
about launching. And I find as a consultant, that's the hardest thing to do, is to convince someone to slow down. And this process with you the second time around, Sid, it's like, yeah, we know where we need to, like, okay, push on the brake a little bit here. We got to slow down. We don't have the ducks in a row.
Yeah, yeah, it's definitely not no light. Let's keep them. Yeah, 100% agree with you. And knowing that actually provides comfort, in that slowing down is okay, because like we know that to be successful, you need this front part ready to go.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Well, do we have any questions? Feel free to come off of mute and ask Sid about his experience as an entrepreneur, with rewards, with investment.
Thank you so much for sharing your experience. My question is around your earliest contributors to your campaign. Who were they? How did you position this?
Yeah, sure. My earliest were people who, were in my running community. People who, from the day I thought about starting the company, they were the people getting the earliest versions of my um what are the things called? Surveys. Like, hey, if I was to start a, what's your favorite piece of running apparel? Um, like, you know, just asking my community of people like what do you want to see? And so then so those were the people who were there on day one. And then also because I told them that this was happening, I was like, there's a process you go through priming and making sure that people know what's coming and give them the details at multiple touch points. And so I use like text message and I use email. Text message I mostly use like, hey, we're about to go live. Hey, we're live. Um, just to get kind of people excited and onto the page early on. And so the people in my community were the first people there. And let me stop. I also say when you think community, I'm thinking like my running community because I have a general larger community of people who supported me, whether it was like people from my previous job or from when I was younger or like when I was in school. But the first people were people in my running community, and then others who saw that support then jumped in and continue to jump in.
I mean, do you think it had a lot to do with the fact they understood, like they didn't even really need to even look at your campaign page? They were just like, okay, I get this. What do I want to buy? Like what?
Yeah. I mean, yes. Yeah. I would say for the earliest people, yes. I think later on, I think people definitely looked at the campaign and, you're always going to have the friends and family who are like, I don't understand this thing. And it's like, did you read? Um, but, um, but yeah, I think the further they are away, removed from it, the more information they're looking for sure. But the more you prepare them earlier, the more support and the more conversions you'll have as you kick off.
And it's interesting you bring that up, and thank you for the question to Pilton, because as we're entering this investment campaign, we actually have developing very different messaging for your community than to the more the angel investors and professional investors that are in your network. And so it's interesting to think about that first campaign and then this campaign and we call it the beached entry, right? We don't throw people in the deep end, right? You and I've talked about it, Sid, that your community don't consider themselves investors, right? So that there's some work that needs to be done to give them comfort with this crowdfunding tool and before that, ask is made.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I think this time around is going to be a lot of a lot more detailed education just in general about the process and not necessarily about the company. Well, yeah, we'll share details about the company, but I think it's going to be a lot more about the process of what they're getting into, at least for my current community of people.
Yeah, well, because it's new. I mean, it's new for most people, but the story I think is compelling, right? So there's a couple questions in the chat, Sid. And I'll go backwards here. Jen is asking, have other business owners in your community been inspired to run a crowdfunding campaign of any type after you did?
I think about it. I can't, not one that comes up to mind right away. I've talked to a bunch of people who have run crowdfunding campaigns. Actually, so someone did, and they ran it on Main Street because they bought a building, but they used Main Street, or is it Main? I think it's called Main Street. It's where Mainvest. Yes. So yeah, someone has. They bought a building and started a business with it, so it's really cool.
Awesome. And then Aisha's asking, a lot of Kickstarter campaigns have tiered rewards or sometimes the option to support without a reward. Is there some way to link that into your future equity crowdfunding rounds? So I think the question here is, can you add perks to your, alongside investment? And correct me if I'm wrong there, Aisha.
Yeah, so I mean, the thought is that I know that some places they'll do things like just support us, we'll send you a sticker or something. And if somebody's putting in, $20, $50 into that because they really like the idea, and then later on an equity crowdfunding round comes out where they could have just actually invested for real, I feel like there's I don't want them to feel like they got shortchanged because they were such an early supporter. So I'm trying to think of is there ways to like link those two together so they still get a deal somehow in a later round, or like in a later in actual investment round, even though they were an early supporter?
I think you're a very nice person and you're overthinking that. And I think if someone's going to support you for the 20 or $50, they're going to continue to support you later on. I don't think that you should. I don't think that, especially if you don't have it already like set up, right? Like, I don't think you should be thinking about. I don't think you should worry about that. But that's a very, a nice thing, I guess, to feel. But I think if people are going to support you, and they don't have, that shouldn't be an expectations from the first campaign to the second. And I don't think you should worry about that, or even promise that, because you don't know what's going to happen. That's my advice. Sorry.
No, I mean, that's, go ahead, Aisha, you want to
I think
follow
you're
up on
probably right that I overthink everything.
You're just super nice. You're like, oh, but you gave me money and I gave you a sticker and I want to give you more. No, like they'll give you more money later. People have money to spend. That's the other thing. People spend their money. They buy nice things all the time. Everyone does. And so give them something to spend their money on that's meaningful to them. And so, here's two chances to support whatever you're building. So
Yeah, and just on on a technical side, you can offer early bird, an early bird in investment crowdfunding as well, depending on the kind of security that you're offering. So there are ways to, it's not specifically to that group, but you're going to send to your community first. They're going to be the first ones to see it. So, if there are any particular early bird special, special things that you, I'm all tongue twisted. Pilson, help me out. Whether it's a discount or, we'll just, for example, if you were doing a revenue share and you were offering 1.5 times return, maybe your early birds get 2 times for a limited period of time. So there are things you can do to really give your community the best opportunity. I said that really badly. I hope I made sense.
That was great. No help required. But if I could just weigh in there, let's not ignore the fact that Sidney is providing equity in a growing company, and we don't want to undervalue that. So that is the reward that people are getting by entering in this transaction. And sometimes you might not want to water that down by including extra perks, because equity in pioneers might become worth quite a lot, right? Especially given the growth trajectory. So let's not lose sight of the value of this potential transaction.
I love that, Pilson. Thank you. And there's perks that you can offer that don't have a hard cost, right? So, we always talk about this in rewards. How can you offer something of value that does not require you to put it in a package with postage and send it out? I think, Sidney's got a lot of experience and wisdom from this process. So, I always encourage people to think out of the box on those ideas, because as you said to Pilson, you're getting equity, or you're going to get some sort of return on debt, like you do over at Honeycomb.
Yeah, no, I agree with the person, and I love the way he said it, because I feel like minority groups, women, people of color, we're always thinking for others and about others, and we have this empathy, and we're like, but no, it's like you're getting value, like you're betting on this, and that's the value you're going to get. And this is what it costs, and don't be ashamed. And this is what I'm going to ask. And, don't put the but, like, hey, will you do this? But this, and that's kind of the vibe I'm getting. It's like you're trying to overcompensate just for someone to come in and support you, but you're offering enough value already. So.
And, I love to think about crowdfunding of all types as shared risk. Right? Like, we assume that founders should carry all the risk. Why do we assume that? you know, if we want these businesses to exist in the world, if we want to see the products and services they offer in the world, then we as investors need to share that risk with these entrepreneurs who are, you know, working so hard. And I, you know, double down on that for, you know, women and minority founders. You know, we need to get in there and share the risk. It's my opinion, my 2 cents.
Yeah.
Any other questions? We're got 2 minutes.
Yeah, I'll ask a question. And thank you so much for this session. And Sidney, thanks for all that inspiration and your journey. And Kathleen for, you know, all of what you do to facilitate various entrepreneurs. I asked this question yesterday in I think a different session, but we are a business that doesn't really have products in that sense. We're a software social impact company that it's Lambent Data that has a collaborative platform, an app that equips healthcare and social service organizations like providers, community health centers, family service organizations to equip their practitioners and empower their families. So the families themselves have this app and can do a lot of different things to help improve their outcomes in health and social drivers of health. But and so there's a lot of value and social impact in what we do, but it's not the kind of thing that maybe lends itself, or maybe I'm not thinking creatively enough, to the rewards based you know, crowdfunding. And so I just wondered if you guys had any ideas. We've been thinking about the equity crowdfunding. We have gotten money before. We have had investors via safes. And so, you know, we do have a track record on that, but we were thinking about this equity crowdfunding idea, but there seems to be a lot of hurdles in terms of costs up front and timetable and that sort of thing. So just wondered if you had any ideas.
Chuck, do you got anything, Sid? I do. I so do.
Oh, I mean, yeah, I'm gonna defer to you because, yeah, no.
You know, one of the things that, and Jen, actually, it was one of the businesses up there in Monadnock. So Jen Risley's up in New Hampshire. It's not a one-to-one, but, you know, I've got 30 seconds here. It was a yoga studio. And what they did was they had other people purchase to make it free to others. And so that may be, since you have a social impact focus, that may be a direction, more of a donation where
Concept,
you're going to give it over to others.
Yeah, I like that. And in fact, we've also thought about, I mean, we do partner with the community partners so that they can get donations and then they can use that for their programs, including our technology. So we've, you know, encouraged that type of thing as well. But what you're saying makes it a little more direct in terms of their, so I like that. Thank you.
So if you pick a particular, what I would do, pick a particular group you want to make this available to and be as specific as possible when you make that ask. And, you know, feel free to reach out, Kirsten. I can direct you to a lot of resources. So.
Well, thank you. Thanks. And best wishes, Sidney, also, including with the Attorney General investigation and everything. That's just kind of heartbreaking to hear about that experience. So
Thank you. I, you know, it's something I say was bound to happen because, I mean, at any point where like there's change, there's always some friction, and there's always, so, you know, I take it as something, and we were able to turn that and make some, you know, we created a t-shirt that you know, that people loved, and, you know, it's the t-shirt said, "We still cheered." So amongst all of, you know, what you tried to do to us, we still cheered. And so, you know.
Yeah, I love that. That's great. That's a good message for a lot of people. So that's great.
Yeah.
Well, thank you so much, Sid. Where can people find Pioneers?
pynrs.com. It's pioneers.com already. I know we're going to leave here in a sec. And yeah.
Are you guys in REI yet? I'll go over to my REI, you know, locally.
Next spring.
Yeah, that'll be cool.